Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we are back to the George Lucas videos, and today we are going over the Tusken slaughter scene and Shmi's death from Attack of the Clones. Not only is this one of my favorite moments in Star Wars, but it's one of my favorite moments in cinema history. It's very powerful and it sets Anakin down his path, and this is a scene that really made Attack of the Clones stand out, I guess, in terms of just how great of a film it is, because this was like some of the best acting, best music, best cinematography, like just everything, and direction and all of that just combined. It was just some of the best that we've seen for Star Wars, and I absolutely love this scene, and the book goes very deep in detail as it typically does. And this is the Attack of the Clones novel by R.A. Salvatore, which I will be reading an excerpt from. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm on page 519 of the prequel trilogy collection. So I think this was released 2007. Yeah, so this is chapter 20. Page 519. Here we go. Under the pale light of a full moon, Anakin Skywalker pulled the speeder bike to the ridge of a high dune and peered across the desert wastes of Tatooine. Not far below him, he saw an encampment spread about a small oasis, and he knew at once, even before spotting a figure, that it was a Tusken camp. He could sense his mother down there, could feel her pain. He crept closer, studying the straw and skin huts for any anomalies that might clue him to their respective purposes. One especially sturdy hut at the edge of the oasis caught and held his attention. It seemed less tended than the others, yet more solidly structured. As he came around a bit more, he grew even more intrigued, noting that only one hut was guarded by a pair of Tuskens flanking the entrance. "Oh, Mom," Anakin whispered. Silent as a shadow, the Padawan slipped through the encampment, moving hut to hut, flat against walls and belly crawling across open spaces, working his way gradually toward the hut he felt held his mother. He came against its side at last and put his hands against the soft skin wall, feeling the emotions and pain of the person within. A quick glance around the front showed him the two Tusken guards, sitting a short distance in front of the door. Anakin drew and ignited his lightsaber, then crouched low, shielding the glow as much as he could. He slid the energy blade through the wall and easily cut the material away. Then, without even pausing to see if any Tuskens were inside, he crawled through. That sentence right there, that is the most Anakin thing you could think of. I mean, come on. Without even pausing to see if any Tuskens were inside, he crawled through. That's how you know, George knew his characters, even, getting R.A. Salvatore to write that in there, because it was the author and George who collaborated on all these books, and George would constantly give notes and feedback. So this is straight from George Lucas. But obviously forced the authors to understand the story. But yeah, I love that sentence. It's just the definition of Anakin Skywalker. Anyways, continuing on. "Mom," he breathed again, and his legs weakened beneath him. The room was lit by dozens of candles and a shaft of pale moonlight, streaming through a hole in the roof, illuminating the figure of Shmi, tied facing against a rack to the side of the tent. Her arms were outstretched, bound at bloodied wrists, and her face, when she turned to the side, showed the weeks of beatings. Anakin quickly cut her free and gently lowered her from the perch into his arms and then down to the floor. "Mom, Mom, Mom," he whispered softly. Anakin knew that she was alive, though she did not immediately respond, and had to come down so pitifully limp. He could feel her in the force, though she was a thin, thin sensation. So that's also an incredible line, because it's showing that her life force is basically almost diminished, which means she's almost dead. So this is such a great description of the force and being able to feel someone's presence, really. So, yeah, I love that. That's really, really cool that they included that in here. He cradled her head and kept repeating her name softly. And finally, Shmi's eyelids fluttered open as much as she could manage through the swelling and the dried blood. "Annie," she whispered back. He could feel her wheezing as she tried to speak, and knew that many of her ribs had been crushed. "Annie, is it you?" Gradually, her eyes began to focus upon him, and he could see a thin smile of recognition coming to her battered face. "I'm here, Mom," he told her. "You're safe now. Hang on. I'm going to get you out of here." "Annie, Annie?" Shmi replied, and she tilted her head, the way she often had when Anakin was a boy, seeming quite amused by him. "You look so handsome." "Save your strength, Mom," he said, trying to calm her. "We've got to get away from here." "My son," Shmi went on, and she seemed to be in a different place than Anakin. A safer place. "My grown-up son, I knew you'd come back to me. I knew it all along." Anakin tried again to tell her to lie still and save her strength, but the words simply wouldn't come out of his mouth. "I'm so proud of you, Annie. So proud. I missed you so much." "I missed you too, Mom, but we can talk later. Now I am complete," Shmi announced then, and she looked straight up, past Anakin, past the hole in the ceiling, to the shining moon, it seemed. Somewhere deep inside, Anakin understood. Great line. "Just stay with me, Mom," he pleaded, and he had to work very hard to keep the desperation out of his voice. And that's something Hayden nailed in that scene too, is you can hear that there's desperation there, but he's trying to hold it back and reel it in. So that's incredible acting. It's very hard to do stuff like that. That's super specific and very natural. It's very hard to do stuff like that. So, it shows Hayden's talent. Anyways, back to the book. "I'm going to make you well again. Everything's going to be fine." "I love," Shmi started to say, but then she went very still, and Anakin saw the light leave her eyes. Anakin could hardly draw his breath. Wide-eyed in disbelief, he lifted Shmi to his breast and rocked her there for a long time. She couldn't be gone. She just couldn't. He pulled her back again, staring into her eyes, silently pleading with her to answer him. But there was no light there, no flicker of life. He hugged her close, rocking her. Then he laid her back to the floor and gently closed her eyes. So that's also a great description of that scene, because you can tell people are like, why wouldn't he break down because blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, because that's not how Anakin is. He's like, I don't want to say immature, but he's doesn't want to accept the reality of things sometimes, and he just thinks completely unrealistically. And he just was in disbelief. He was like, there's no way she's dead. She can't be gone. She couldn't. It's denial. And this is how some people do act when their relatives or whoever, someone they care about, dies. That's an actual way that people respond, depending on their personality. So here we go. This is where we get to the cool part. Well, it's all cool, but the slaughter. Yeah. Anakin didn't know what to do. He sat motionless, staring at his dead mother, then looked up, his blue eyes blazing with hatred and rage. He replayed all of the recent events of his life in his head, wondering what he might have done differently, what better to keep Shmi alive. He should never have left her here in the first place, he realized. Should never have let Qui-Gon take him away from Tatooine without bringing his mother along as well. She said she was so proud of him. But how could he deserve her pride if he could not even save her? He wanted Shmi to be proud of him, wanted to tell his mom all about the things that had come into his life, his Jedi training, all the good work he had already done, and most of all, about Padme. How he wanted his mom to get to know Padme. She would have loved her. How could she not? And Padme would have loved her. Now what was he going to do? The minutes slipped past and Anakin just sat there, immobilized by his confusion, by a budding rage and the most profound sense of emptiness he had ever known. Only when the pale light began to grow around him, making the low-burning candles seem even thinner, did he even remember where he was. Okay. Candles, low-burning candles seem even thinner. What is that? The light fading out. Like, I'm telling you, these books, all of them, all of the novels, but this one in particular is like, this one in Revenge, like, they're just so well written. Like, that, oh my God, bro, George is genius. He looked about, wondering how he might get his mother's body out of there, for he certainly wasn't going to leave it to the Tusken Raiders. He could hardly move, though. There seemed to be a profound pointlessness to it all, a series of motions without meaning. At that time, the only meaning, the only purpose that Anakin could fathom was that of the rage building within him, an anger at losing someone he did not wish to give up. Some small part of him warned him not to give in to that anger, warned him that such emotions were of the dark side. Then he looked at Shmi lying there, so still, seeming at peace, but covered with the clear evidence of all the pain that had been inflicted upon her poor body these last days. The Jedi Padawan climbed to his feet and took up his lightsaber, then boldly strode through the door. The 2 Tusken guards gave a yelp and lifted their staves, rushing for him, but the blue glowing blade ignited, and in a flash of killing light, Anakin took them down, left and right. The rage was not sated. So then, should I read the Yoda part? No, I could read the Yoda part. Why not? More Star Wars, right? Who cares? But yeah, all of this, like this whole page I read right now, that was all in his head in those like 5 seconds that he was sitting there. And that's really cool because it shows the conflict and it shows how much he's thinking about things in such a skewed way. You know, and all the what ifs and what if and you know, if this happened and should have happened, the what ifs and shoulds, you know, all of that, like, just ridiculous thinking that it won't take you anywhere but despair, you know, is what got to him and made him slaughter the camp. You know, where if he had just listened to Qui-Gon's teachings and been like, just be in the moment, right? This is what was going to happen, and this is how the Force wanted things to go, and this is just how it's going to happen, right? Instead of thinking like that, he thought, but I could have saved her because of this, and this person, and that, and that. It's like, you see all of that in this page, and that's what I've always thought when I've seen the scene, you know, hundreds of times. That's always what I thought he was thinking, and, you know, it's cool to have verification. But yeah, so we'll do the Yoda scene, and then the slaughter, my mistake, is next page. So after the Yoda scene. So we'll do the Yoda scene now. Deep in his meditations, peering through the dark side, Master Yoda felt a sudden surge of anger, of outrage beyond control. The diminutive master's eyes popped open wide at the overwhelming strength of that rage. And then he heard a voice, a familiar voice, crying, "No, Anakin, no, don't, no." It was Qui-Gon. Yoda knew that it was Qui-Gon, but Qui-Gon was dead, had become one with the Force. One could not retain consciousness and sense of self in that state. One could not speak from beyond the grave. But Yoda had heard the ghostly call, and in his deep meditative state, his thoughts focused as precisely as they had ever been. The Jedi Master knew that he had not been mistaken. He wanted to focus on that, then, perhaps, to try to follow that call back to the ghostly source, but he could not, overwhelmed again by the surge of rage and pain and power. He made a noise and lurched forward, then came out of his trance as his door opened and Mace Windu rushed in. "What is it?" Mace asked.
"Pain."
I should do my Kermit Yoda voice.
"Suffering. Death. I fear something terrible has happened."
Yeah, so that's, I like doing that. It's just funny. I don't know. My Kermit Yoda. I like combine Kermit and Yoda together. I'll be serious. Pain. Suffering. Death. I fear something terrible has happened. Young Skywalker is in pain. Terrible pain. He didn't tell Mace the rest of it. That somehow Anakin's rush of agony manifesting in the Force had tapped into the spirit of the dead Jedi Master who had discovered him. Too much was happening here. That disembodied familiar voice hung profoundly in Yoda's thoughts. For if it was true, if he had heard what he was sure he had heard. There you go. So that's the Yoda scene. So this is the first time ever that Yoda hears about or discovers that Qui-Gon is retain consciousness after death. This is the very first time ever. And that's really, really cool to see, because to be honest, I forgot about that. I forgot that this was the exact moment, but it makes a lot of sense. But it's cool too to see how composed Yoda is, and if that were Anakin, he would have been like, "What's that? What's that?" Yoda's just like, "Oh, that's interesting." It shows it's the parallel between the two characters. Yeah, but that's sick, dude. I miss Star Wars that's this good. Like, this is a level we'll probably never get again. But it's just... Anakin, too, had heard the voice of Qui-Gon, imploring him to restrain himself, to deny the rage. He hadn't recognized it, though, for he was too full of pain and anger. He spotted a Tusken woman to the side, in front of the others' tents, carrying a pail of dirty water, and saw a Tusken child in the shadows of another nearby hut, staring at him with an incredulous expression. Then he was moving, though he was hardly aware of his actions. His blade flashed, and he ran on. The Tusken woman screamed and was impaled. Now all the camp seemed in motion, Tuskens rushing out of every hut, many with weapons in hand, but Anakin was into the dance of death then, into the energy of the Force. He leapt far and long, clearing one hut and coming down before another, his blade flashing before he even landed, even before the two Tuskens recognized that he had jumped between them. A third came at him, thrusting forth a spear, but Anakin lifted an empty hand and set up a wall of Force energy as solid as stone. Then he shoved out with that hand, and the Tusken spearman flew away, fully 30 meters, smashing through the wall of yet another hut. Anakin was off and running, off and leaping, his blade spinning left and right in a blur, every stab taking a Tusken down, withering to the ground, every slash putting a piece of a Tusken on the ground. A piece, bro. Ooh. And this is all filmed. I guarantee you, if I ever see Nick Gillard, I'm going to add, this is my question, and I've had this forever. Did you guys ever film the Tusken slaughter scene? I know they filmed the youngling scene. I know they filmed tons of like Jedi being killed in the temple. Did they ever film the Tusken slaughter scene? That's the one question I have, and I nearly guarantee you that they have, because this is so like so descriptive just by the action. Man, that would have been cool to see. But I get why George didn't do it, because it's too brutal, and I understand that. Soon none were standing against him, all trying to flee, but Anakin would have none of that. He saw one group rush into a hut and reached out across the way to a large boulder in the distance. It flew to his call, soaring across the sand, smashing one fleeing Tusken down and flying on. Anakin dropped it on the hut full of Tuskens, crushing them all. And then he was running, his strides enhanced by the Force, overcoming the fleeing creatures, slaughtering them. Every one. He didn't feel empty any longer. He felt a surge of energy and strength beyond anything he had ever known. Felt full of the Force, full of power, full of life. And then it was over. Suddenly, it seemed. And Anakin stood among the ruins of the encampment. Dozens and dozens of dead Tusken raiders all about him. And only a single hut still standing. He put his lightsaber away and walked back to that hut, where he gently and reverently scooped his mother's body into his arms. Yeah, I'm gonna just stop it there. There you go. That right there is what I think is one of the just best scenes ever devised, because of all the stakes and the emotion and the plot of that one scene and how it impacts the rest of this universe. Not even the rest of the movie, not even the rest of the 6 films, but the entire galaxy and the entire Star Wars universe. That one instance just creates this giant ball of mess that just kind of tumbles down. And slowly, it tumbles slowly, but eventually you jump 3 years and now everything is a disaster. The Jedi are gone, etc. But that is the beginning of the end for the Republic right there, So that's not even the Republic, dude. The Jedi, the galaxy, the peace of the galaxy. Like that moment is so impactful for Star Wars. And, as a script writer and as director, and, that is a massive inspiration for me, because that scene has always been really, touching. And I remember seeing that as a kid, and you think, in Anakin's shoes, that is, every little kid's worst nightmare. And seeing that happen was, horrifying. And George really found a way to put us in Anakin's shoes. And then, of course, we did, our lenses flipped like Anakin's. They flipped to, oh, these guys are just monsters. And he kills them. And as the kids who don't really understand, what he's really doing, that's yeah, but obviously now it's that's taking him in a very bad place. Would I probably do that if I was in his situation and my mother got killed by Tuskens? Probably. Not the whole camp. I'm not like him, not gonna kill a whole camp, but the ones outside, I might slip, and that's just being human. Not really, though. No, I probably wouldn't, because I have more common sense than him, and I'd probably, go back to, the Lars homestead, and then, gather a bunch of, an army of people, and we just charge the camp and like blow it to smithereens. That's more what I do. I wouldn't just rush in there and try to take on every Tusken. That's not what I would do. So there you go. But yes, would I be pissed and would I want to kill them? Yes, I would. Because that's what most people would do if you saw your mother be brutalized like that by these things that you have no personal connection to. You know what? Like, that's probably gonna happen, you know? Which isn't good, but it's true, you know, it really is. But yeah, that scene I love that scene. And it's like, it's hard to nail down an absolute best moment in Star Wars history. It's really hard because there are so many, you know, whether they're seriously they are, or they personally are, or they jokingly are, right? Like, there's so many. Like, I love Jedi Rocks in Return of the Jedi. That's like up there for me because that is the most Star Wars-y thing ever. Because you have these cool bounty hunters, you have these weird aliens, you have this goofy song. Like, it feels so otherworldly, and it's like the cantina scene on crack. It's just so cool. I actually met Weequay at LA Comic Con the other day, which is really cool. And I was too, like, I should have gotten a picture with him, but I didn't. But like, his drum was there, and it was like, I talked to him. He's super chill. But it's, you know, that's another thing, but, you know, just by the way. But yeah, like, I love that scene. I obviously love the Anakin versus Obi-Wan and Revenge. I love this scene. I love the binary sunset scene. I love the throne room scene. Like, it's so hard. I love the Luke versus Vader fight in Empire, the Luke versus Vader fight in Return, the Force Ghost Anakin scene in Episode 6. Like, it's just so impossible for me to, like, be like, yep, this is it, you know? Like, it's so hard. But this is, like, so close to just being kind of it. Like, this is my filmmaking style is literally this scene just molded into completely different things, you know, that aren't Star Wars, obviously. And they are Star Wars, you know, some. But that, like, that whole, the tone of it, the feel of it, the look of it, like, it just, that's, like, that's my thing, you know? It's so cool. I love really, like, dramatic, dark stories. Not too dark, but dark, you know, like Revenge, or this scene in Revenge of the Sith dark. That's kind of my ideal thing. But I can also go super light when I'm making Star Wars, but it's impossible for me to go super light in any other, like, situation, which is funny. But yeah, like, this scene means a lot to me. It's, you know, so cool. And I wish we got that scene of him wiping the camp out, because that would have just been crazy. I mean, come on. Dropping a boulder on a tent and just going through every tent and just, like, that would have been really cool to see. And we could have gotten a montage that was only like 20 seconds, and that would have been enough, you know, like, of just straight up, just maybe even less than that, you know, like, it could have been super short. But that would have just been really cool to see. But obviously, you know, Star Wars is meant to be watched by kids of all ages, and that would have been pushing it, you know, because you're already having kids watch, like, someone's mom die and him chopping 2 Tuskens' heads off. Actually, 3. Actually, no, because he cuts one and the head doesn't come off. So he cuts the other one, the head comes off, and then he chops the other guy like this. Like, that is a very, very brutal, like, slash dismemberment that we haven't seen in Star Wars other than that one moment. Like, it was, like, straight across here, you know? Like, that was... But yeah, he cut it at the right moment for that reason, you know? I completely understand that. And I'm not going to be like these cringe TikTok babies are like, we should make a rated R Star Wars movie. I'm like, that's legitimately against George's philosophy, you idiots. Like, you cannot do that. Yeah, no, that's just stupid. I'm sorry. You know, and there's no reason for it to be. It's sabers and blasters, like it's all laser stuff, and there's no gushing blood. So the most it would be was PG-13. You know, the only thing that would have made Revenge R is the kid scene, the youngling scene. That would have been it. But like the rest of the Jedi killings, that would have been just probably harder PG-13. Because it's like fantasized weaponry. So yeah, you know, just food for thought. It's, you know, interesting thing to remember when you're like, oh, why didn't they have that? That's so stupid. Why would he not? It's like, because that's not what Star Wars was made for. Do I wish I saw it? Yes. But do I understand why he didn't and respect why he didn't? 1000%. So, yeah, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed that. There's so many more scenes to go through in here. So many more books to go through. So much more lore to go through. Balanced with all the news, you know. Yeah, I'll try to get more of these out. But with all the horse crap, we'll see. You know, and there was another horse crap thing that happened today. But I'm just so, like, burnt out from that crap that I just didn't want to deal with it. Not gonna lie. And it wasn't... It's pretty bad, actually. Never mind. But it's, you know... Yeah. I'll mention it in the next Saudi Live. But, yeah. Till then, see you in the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like. Please subscribe and share. May the Force be with you always.